teaches us that every human being is created in the image of God. Yet at the same time, there is a caste system. There are some people that are supposed to be more holy, live on a higher level, and elevate the rest of humanity to godliness. Who are those people? They are the Kohanim. Now, you might know somebody whose last name is Kohen, but that does not necessarily mean they are a spiritual Kohen. A Kohen is someone who has a tradition that their father was a Kohen. It's a patrilineal descent issue going all the way back to Aaron, Moses' brother, who was the first Kohen. It happens to be that I am a Kohen. Now, having the spiritual reality of being a Kohen, with it comes responsibilities, privileges, and restrictions. For the most part, the responsibilities and the privileges are a little bit set aside today, but the restrictions are in full force and actually are very insightful for how to have a very meaningful life. But first, let's talk a moment about the responsibilities. As a Kohen back in ancient times, a person did not own land, but rather they had a responsibility to teach Torah to the Jewish people and give everyone spiritual guidance. They also would serve in the Beis HaMikdash, the temple, which lasted for about 1,000 years. They would serve for a couple weeks every year. As part of this, they had privileges. They were always accorded a certain higher honor. As a matter of fact, it was like if you were honoring a Kohen, that was how you would honor the Almighty. For the fact that they had to teach everybody Torah and give them spiritual guidance, the Jewish people would support the Kohanim. As a general rule, people would give about 2% of their income to every Kohen. That would force the Kohen to be involved with about 50 different families and give those families spiritual guidance. In addition to that, people would give the Kohanim extra gifts at specific times. When we get to the restrictions, this is where it gets fascinating. The Kohanim were not allowed to come into direct or sometimes indirect contact with the dead. They were never allowed to touch a corpse, and they would not be allowed to be under the same roof or within 6 feet of a Jewish corpse. This causes a little bit of a problem while being a congregational rabbi, because at Young Israel Aish, as we like to say, we marry him, but we don't bury him. Or actually, more accurately, is if you're part of our synagogue, you're not allowed to die. In terms of the other restrictions, well, a Kohen may not marry a divorcee, may not marry a convert, nor may he marry a woman who at one time was very promiscuous and perhaps had sexual relations with someone that she could not marry. The interesting question is if these Kohanim have a responsibility to be godly and bring other people to godliness, fine, give them extra gifts, support them so they can do their holy work, but why do you have to impose all these restrictions upon them? The Torah teaches us an amazing thing. If you want to be a godly person and you want to elevate other people in a spiritual vein, you've got to be a happy individual. And you must be deeply connected with other happy individuals. And the problem with all these situations is that there's a profound aspect of sadness in each one of these. So, for example, we don't have to go too far to understand that when someone dies, there's deep sadness. A Kohen may comfort the bereaved, and they may counsel the bereaved, but they may not be in the presence of the actual corpse. When it comes to marrying a divorcee, well, divorce is an interesting thing. If someone were to come over to you and say, I got divorced from my ex-husband, you'd say, Mazel tov, the guy was a bum anyway. Let's get rid of him and start anew. But the truth is, divorce can be a traumatic event. Here one invests so much into a relationship, and then they cut it off. In Judaism, there is a place for divorce. But the Torah compares it to your commitment to your hand. What is your commitment to your hand? Would you ever cut off your hand? Well, if it became gangrene and was infecting the rest of your body and it was killing you, yes, you'd cut off your hand. But you probably would not cut off your hand if, well, you became a little bored with it, somebody else had a nicer hand, it doesn't do all the things it used to do for me. These are reasons you are not going to cut off your hand, and hopefully you would not get divorced for those reasons either. What about marrying a convert? What's wrong with that? A convert is a beautiful thing. An individual wants to come under the wings of the divine presence and live a more spiritual, holy life under the guise of Judaism. How fantastic is that? But when the convert makes a commitment to do that, in essence, they also are cutting out a big part of their life. In a similar way to when a person gets divorced, they are cutting out part of their former life. With a convert, it is to such an extent that we say even the person's parents are no longer their spiritual parents. And that can be traumatic on a person. And it's certainly a woman who at one time was promiscuous and went around from man to man to man to man and had relations with someone she is not allowed to marry, well, that person also is misusing the holiness that is attributed to the sexual relationship. See, the intimate relationship between a man and a woman is to connect them in such a way that the two people will have a feeling of what does it mean to be deeply connected with God. Someone who misuses that opportunity is left with a very profound sense of sadness. Remember, the feeling of joy is when the soul responds to an individual fulfilling their potential. When we misuse our potential, then the joy is pulled out in a very deep way. So whereas you can have a convert who got divorced and who at one time was very promiscuous, through the guidance of Torah and Jewish law, they can live a very happy, meaningful, productive life. That person still should not attach themselves on the deepest of soul levels with a Kohen. Because if they were to, then the Kohen would be prevented from being as godly as they could be, and in turn, elevating everyone else up to a higher sense of spirituality. So the message is for all of us, whether you are a Kohen or not, if you want to be the most spiritual person you can be, and you want to be the holiest and godliest person, and bring the most positive influence to everybody you can, you've got to be happy. You've got to live with a sense of joyfulness. And you've got to become connected with other people that can help you be happy and help you be joyful. I'm Rabbi Wyne, the Young Israeli Aish.